The shovel bit into the hard Arizona earth, just as the sun crested over the Dragoon Mountains, and Penelope Parker wiped the sweat from her brow before it could drip into her eyes, knowing she had 3 more graves to finish before noon if she wanted to eat that day. She had been digging and tending graves in Tombstone for 2 years now, ever since the cholera took her parents and left her with nothing but calloused hands and a strong back, charging $1 per grave to keep herself alive in a town where death was the most reliable business. The cemetery sprawled across the hill overlooking the dusty streets, wooden crosses and occasional stone markers dotting the landscape like crooked teeth, and Penelope knew every occupant by name, every story whispered in saloons and parlors about how each soul had met their end. She was 20 years old and had long since stopped crying over the dead. Her dark blonde hair stayed tied back in a practical braid, and she wore men's trousers under her skirts because dresses alone would not protect her legs from the thorny brush and rocky soil. The undertaker, Mr. Garrison, sent work her way when families could not afford his full services, and she had earned a reputation for keeping the graves neat, the weeds pulled, the crosses straight. Some folks thought it morbid that a young woman should spend her days among the deceased, but Penelope found a strange peace in the work. The dead made no demands except to be remembered, and that was something she could provide. She was tamping down the earth on a gambler's grave when she heard the horse approach. Most people came to the cemetery on foot, leading her to glance up with curiosity. The rider was tall in the saddle, his black hat pulled low against the morning glare, and he sat his buckskin horse with the easy grace of a man born to the frontier. He dismounted smoothly, tying his horse to the cemetery gate, and Penelope noted the well-worn colt at his hip, the leather vest over a dark blue shirt, the dust that coated his boots and spoke of long miles traveled. "You the grave tender." His voice was deep, rougher than creek gravel but not unkind. Penelope straightened, leaning on her shovel. "I am. Penelope Parker, $1 a grave for digging, 50 cents for tending existing ones." He walked closer, and she could see his face better now. He was perhaps 24 or 25, with dark brown hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of winter sky, pale blue and sharp. A scar ran along his jawline, thin and white against sun-bronzed skin. He was handsome in the way rough country made men handsome, all hard angles and weathered strength. "Name's Morgan Hayes. I've got a grave needs tending, but I want to talk to you about something else too." "The grave first, then," Penelope said, gesturing across the cemetery. "Which one?" He led her to the far corner where the mesquite grew thick, where the newer graves clustered. He stopped before a simple wooden cross that read, "Sarah Hayes, beloved wife, 1860–1881. Penelope had dug that grave herself 6 months ago, though she had not seen the husband at the burial. Mr. Garrison had handled the service. "Your wife," Penelope said softly. "I am sorry for your loss." Morgan stared at the grave, his jaw tight. "I was driving cattle to Colorado when she took sick, didn't make it back in time, didn't even get to say goodbye." His hands curled into fists at his sides. "I want her grave tended proper, regular-like, and I want you to teach me how." This surprised Penelope. Most men would simply pay and walk away. "You want to learn to tend it yourself. She deserves better than a stranger's care, no offense meant. But I don't know the first thing about keeping a grave, and I'm gone half the year moving cattle. So I need someone who can do it when I cannot, and who can show me how when I am here." He finally looked at her directly, and the grief in those pale eyes was so raw it made her chest ache. "I will pay you proper for your time. More than $1, Penelope considered. "I charge 50 cents for tending an existing grave through a month. That includes pulling weeds, straightening the marker, clearing debris. I can show you how to do the same, no extra charge for teaching." "That is not what I am asking." Morgan pulled off his hat, running a hand through his hair. "I want to hire you permanent, to tend this grave as long as you are able and to tend other things too." "What other things?" He looked uncomfortable now, shifting his weight. "My ranch is 5 miles south of here. Small operation, just me and 2 hired hands. The house is falling apart because Sarah was the one who kept it together, and I have been living like an animal since she passed. Eating beans from a can, sleeping in my clothes. The hands are talking about quitting because the place has gone to hell." He met her eyes again. "I need someone to manage the house. Cook, clean, keep things running. I will pay you $30 a month plus room and board, and you can still tend graves in town if you want, long as the ranch work gets done." $30 a month was a fortune compared to what Penelope scraped together now. But living on a ranch with a widowed cowboy she had just met seemed like inviting trouble, and she said as much. "There is a separate room off the kitchen," Morgan said quickly. "Door with a lock. The hands bunk in the barn. You would have your privacy, Miss Parker, and my word as a gentleman that I would respect it. You do not know me. I could be a terrible cook. Can you make something besides beans and hardtack? I can make plenty of things. Then you are already an improvement." He put his hat back on. "Look, I know it is sudden, but I have been watching you work while I stood here trying to gather the courage to ask. You tend these graves like they matter, like the people in them mattered. That is the kind of person I need, someone who cares about doing things right." Penelope looked around the cemetery, at the rows of graves she had tended for 2 years. It was honest work, but it was lonely work, and she was tired of scraping by on dollars and dimes, of wondering if she would make rent each month on the tiny room she kept above the general store. The idea of a real kitchen, of cooking real meals, of having space to breathe was more tempting than she wanted to admit. "I want to see the ranch first," she said finally, "and meet your hands. If it seems proper, I will consider it." Relief washed over Morgan's face. "That is fair. Can you come today? I have 2 more graves to finish. This afternoon. I will come back at 3 o'clock. And Miss Parker," he touched the brim of his hat, "thank you for tending Sarah's grave before I even knew to ask. Mr. Garrison told me you keep this whole cemetery near as a pin. That gave me comfort." He rode off before she could respond, leaving Penelope standing beside Sarah Hayes's grave, wondering what she was getting herself into. The ranch was small but well situated, tucked into a valley with a creek running through it and grazing land that stretched toward the mountains. The house was adobe with a wooden porch, and Morgan had not exaggerated its condition. The windows were filthy, the porch sagged on one side, and when he opened the door, Penelope saw dishes piled in the dry sink, dust thick on every surface, and clothes scattered across the furniture. "I told you it was bad," Morgan said, sounding embarrassed. The 2 ranch hands were brothers named Jack and Tom Sullivan, both in their 30s, weathered and quiet. They tipped their hats to Penelope respectfully, and Jack said, "We have been trying to keep things together, miss, but none of us know how to run a house proper." "We are cowboys, not housekeepers," Tom added. "No shame in that." Penelope walked through the house, noting what needed fixing, what needed cleaning, what needed replacing. The separate room Morgan mentioned was small but adequate, with a narrow bed and a window facing east. The kitchen had a good stove and plenty of storage. The whole place had good bones, it just needed care. "I will take the job," she said, turning to face Morgan, "but I have conditions. I keep tending graves in town 2 days a week. Sunday I have to myself. And if at any point this arrangement becomes improper or uncomfortable, I leave with a week's wages, no argument." "Agreed." Morgan stuck out his hand and Penelope shook it. His grip was firm and calloused, a working man's hand. "When can you start?" "Give me 2 days to settle my affairs in town. I will be here Thursday morning." She moved to the ranch on a clear October morning, her few belongings fitting in a single trunk. Morgan helped her carry it to her room, then left her to settle in while he and the hands went out to mend fences. Penelope stood in the quiet house, looking at the overwhelming task before her, and decided to start with the kitchen. If she could cook them a good supper, she would prove her worth right away. She scrubbed the stove, washed every dish and pot, swept and mopped the floors. In the pantry she found flour, lard, some withered potatoes, and a few cans of tomatoes. Not much to work with, but enough. She made a list of supplies she would need and left it on the table, then got to work. By the time the men came in at sunset, the kitchen gleamed and the smell of baking bread filled the house. Morgan stopped in the doorway, staring. "Is that fresh bread? And stew, though it is mostly potatoes and canned tomatoes. I left you a list of things to get from town so I can cook proper meals." Penelope ladled stew into bowls, sliced the bread, and set the table. The men sat down like they were in church, careful and quiet. Tom took the first bite and closed his eyes. "Lord have mercy." "It is just stew," Penelope said, but she was pleased. "Madam, we have been eating boot leather and beans for 6 months," Jack said. "This is a miracle." Morgan ate without speaking, but she saw the tension ease from his shoulders, saw him take a second slice of bread. When the meal was done, he looked at her across the table. "You are worth twice what I am paying you." "I will hold you to that come raise time," Penelope said, and the men laughed. Over the next weeks, Penelope transformed the house. She scrubbed, mended, organized, and decorated with small touches. Wildflowers in a jar, curtains for the windows that she sewed from old fabric she found in a trunk. She learned that Morgan liked his coffee strong and his eggs scrambled, that Jack had a sweet tooth and Tom could not abide onions. She rode into town twice a week to tend graves, and Morgan always sent one of the hands with her to carry her tools and ensure she was safe. The work was hard but satisfying. She liked having a purpose beyond mere survival, liked sitting down to meals with others instead of eating alone in her rented room. The men treated her with respect, and Morgan kept his word about her privacy. He was polite but distant, always calling her Miss Parker, always maintaining proper boundaries, but she caught him watching her sometimes. When she was kneading bread, her sleeves rolled up and flour on her cheeks. When she returned from the cemetery with dirt under her fingernails and sadness in her eyes. When she sat on the porch in the evenings, reading by lamplight the battered books she had brought with her. November came cold and sharp. Penelope woke one morning to frost on her window and realized she had been at the ranch for a month. It felt both longer and shorter than that. She had fallen into rhythms here, learned the sounds of the place. The hands calling to each other, the cattle lowing, the creak of the windmill. And Morgan's voice, low and steady, talking to his horse or giving instructions to the men. She was peeling apples for a pie when Morgan came into the kitchen, hat in hand. "Miss Parker, I am riding up to check the north pasture. Thought you might want to come see more of the ranch." Penelope set down her paring knife. "Is this proper?" "The hands are working on the barn roof. They can see the north pasture from there, nothing improper about it." He paused. "But I understand if you would rather not." She should say no. She should maintain the careful distance they had established. But she was curious about the ranch, and if she was honest, curious about Morgan Hayes. "Let me get my coat." They rode out together, Morgan on his buckskin and Penelope on a gentle mare named Daisy. The land rolled away in browns and golds, the grass dried by autumn, the sky so blue it hurt to look at. Morgan pointed out landmarks. The line of cottonwoods that marked the creek, the rocky outcrop where mountain lions sometimes denned, the old line shack where riders could shelter during storms. "Sarah and I homesteaded this land 4 years ago," he said as they rode. "Built the house with our own hands, her working right beside me. She was strong, stronger than she looked. Came from Boston, a city girl, but she took to ranch life like she was born to it." His voice went soft with memory. "She could rope a calf, shoot a rattlesnake, birth a foal. She was fearless." "How did you meet?" Penelope asked gently. "I was working on her father's ranch in New Mexico. He had come west for his health, bought land, had no idea how to run it. I was his foreman." Sarah was 18, just finished with school back east, and she hated everything about the West at first. "Too hot, too dusty, too rough. We fought like cats and dogs." He smiled faintly. "Then one day she asked me to teach her to ride properly, not side saddle but astride like the men. Her father would have had a fit, so we snuck out early mornings. Spent hours together, and somewhere in all that, we fell in love. Her father did not approve. He wanted her to marry some banker from Santa Fe, but Sarah was stubborn. She told him she was marrying me or nobody, and eventually he gave in. We came here to start fresh, build something of our own." Morgan looked out over the land. "We had 3 good years. That is more than some people get." Penelope thought of her own parents, gone so quickly to disease. "It is never enough time, though." "No," he agreed. "It is not." They stopped beside the creek to water the horses. Penelope dismayed and walked to the bank, watching the clear water run over smooth stones. Morgan joined her, standing close enough that she could feel the warmth of him in the cold air. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Yes." "Why did you stay in Tombstone after your parents died? A young woman alone, you could have gone anywhere, done anything." Penelope picked up a smooth stone, turned it over in her hand. "I thought about leaving, but my parents are buried there. Someone needs to tend their graves, and I suppose I did not know where else to go. Tombstone is hard, but it is honest. You know where you stand." "You tend your parents' graves yourself, then?" "Every week. No one pays me for those." She tossed the stone into the creek. "I talk to them sometimes, tell them about my week, about the people I have met. It helps." Morgan was quiet for a long moment. "I talk to Sarah too, at her grave. Feel foolish doing it, but I cannot seem to stop." "It is not foolish. The dead may not answer, but speaking to them keeps them real, keeps them with us." She looked up at him. "When I tend her grave, I will listen if you want to talk to her, or I can give you privacy, whichever you prefer." Something shifted in his expression, a wall coming down. "You are a kind woman, Penelope Parker." It was the first time he had used her Christian name, and the sound of it in his rough voice did something strange to her heartbeat. "I try to be." They rode back as the sun lowered, painting the sky orange and pink. When they reached the ranch, Morgan helped her down from Daisy, his hands firm on her waist, and for a moment they stood very close. She could see the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples, could smell horse and leather and sage on him. "Thank you for riding with me," he said quietly. "Thank you for showing me the land." That night, lying in her narrow bed, Penelope admitted to herself what she had been avoiding. She was developing feelings for Morgan Hayes, feelings that went beyond employer and employee, beyond simple friendship. She thought about his smile, rare but genuine. The way he listened when she spoke, really listened. The care he took with his animals, his land, his people. The grief he carried that matched her own. This was dangerous territory. She was his housekeeper, dependent on him for her livelihood, and he was a widower still mourning his wife. Nothing could come of this attraction except pain. She would have to be more careful, keep more distance, protect her heart, but the heart, she was learning, did not much care for protection. December brought the first snow, light dustings that melted by midday but turned the world briefly beautiful. Penelope decorated the house for Christmas with pine boughs and red ribbon, and baked cookies that filled the house with the scent of cinnamon and molasses. The hands grew cheerful with the holiday approaching, talking about visiting family in Tucson. "What about you, Miss Parker?" Jack asked over supper one night. "You going to town for Christmas?" "I do not have family to visit," Penelope said. "I will stay here, tend the animals." "You should come to Tucson with us," Tom offered. "Our ma would love to meet you, and she sets a table that would make angels weep." It was kind of them, but Penelope shook her head. "I appreciate the offer, but I will be fine here." After the hands left for the barn, Morgan said, "You should not be alone for Christmas." "I will not be alone. You will be here, will you not?" He looked surprised. "I was planning to stay, yes. The animals need tending, and I do not have family either." "But I assumed you would want to go to town, be with people." "The people I care about are dead or here," Penelope said simply. "I do not need a crowd for Christmas." So it was decided. Jack and Tom left on December 23rd, promising to return in a week, and Penelope and Morgan found themselves alone on the ranch. It should have felt awkward, but instead it felt natural. They did the chores together, Morgan milking the cow while Penelope fed the chickens, both of them checking on the horses and the small herd of cattle in the near pasture. Christmas Eve, Penelope cooked a feast: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, carrots glazed with honey, biscuits so light they nearly floated off the plate. She had made an apple pie from the last of the stored fruit, and she had even found some coffee beans to grind fresh. Morgan stared at the table she had set, complete with candles and the good dishes she had found and washed. "Penelope, this is too much. It is Christmas. It should feel special." She sat down across from him. "Besides, I have not had anyone to cook for at Christmas in 3 years. Let me enjoy it." They ate slowly, talking about small things: the weather, the ranch, the new calf that had been born that morning. But as the meal wound down and the candles burned low, the conversation deepened. "You miss Boston?" Penelope asked. "Sarah's home. I never went there." She talked about it sometimes, the buildings and the crowds, the ocean. But I think she preferred the West for all its hardships. She said there was room to breathe here. Morgan refilled their coffee cups. "You ever think about marrying, having a family of your own?" The question surprised her. "I used to. Before my parents died, I thought I would marry young, have children, the usual path. But then I was alone, and survival became more important than dreams. Now I am 20, and most men my age are already married or looking for someone younger, prettier, with better prospects." "You are pretty," Morgan said, and then looked embarrassed. "I mean, that is not the issue. Any man would be lucky to have you." Penelope felt heat rise in her cheeks. "That is kind of you to say." "It is not kindness, it is truth." He met her eyes across the table. "You are capable, intelligent, strong. You work harder than most men I know. And you have compassion, real compassion, not just pity. That is rare. You barely know me. I have watched you for 2 months. I see how you treat the hands with respect but not familiarity. I see how you care for the animals, gentle but firm. I see how you tend graves like you are tending gardens, making beauty out of sorrow." His voice dropped lower. "I see you, Penelope Parker, more than you might think." The air between them felt charged, electric. Penelope's heart hammered against her ribs. "Morgan, I do not think we should, I know. It is too soon. I am still grieving Sarah, and you are my employee, and there are 100 reasons this is complicated." He stood abruptly, began clearing plates. "I apologize. The holiday has made me melancholy and foolish." Penelope stood too, catching his hand. "You are not foolish, and I am glad you see me, because I see you too, the way you gentle a spooked horse with just your voice. The way you fix things that are broken instead of throwing them away. The way you visit Sarah's grave every Sunday and talk to her like she is still beside you. She squeezed his hand once, then released it. I see your heart, Morgan Hayes. It is a good one, even broken as it is. He stared at her, something raw and vulnerable in his expression. What are we doing here, Penelope? I do not know, she admitted. But we do not have to figure it out tonight. It is Christmas Eve. Let us just be grateful for the moment. They finished cleaning the kitchen together, working in comfortable silence. When the last dish was dried and put away, Morgan said, I have something for you. I was not sure if I should give it to you, but after tonight, I think I will. He disappeared into his room and returned with a small package wrapped in brown paper. Penelope opened it carefully and found a pair of leather gloves, soft and well made, perfect for ranch work or grave tending. I noticed yours were wearing through, Morgan said. I had these made in town. They are beautiful, thank you. She felt guilty suddenly. I did not get you anything. You have given me plenty. A clean house, good food, company. That is more than enough. He smiled, and it reached his eyes this time. Merry Christmas, Penelope. Merry Christmas, Morgan. She wore the gloves when she tended Sarah's grave the next day, Morgan beside her. They pulled weeds together in the cold sunshine, straightened the cross, cleared away the fallen leaves. When they were done, Morgan stood looking down at the grave for a long time. I think you would have liked Penelope, he said quietly, speaking to Sarah. She is different from you, quieter maybe, but just as strong. She is taking care of things at the ranch, taking care of me, though I do not deserve it. I hope you do not mind that I am starting to feel again. I will always love you, but I think maybe there is room in a heart for more than one love. I think maybe you would want me to be happy. His voice broke slightly. I miss you every day, but I am starting to think I might survive this after all. Penelope turned away to give him privacy for his tears, her own eyes burning. When he was ready, they walked back down the hill together, and she slipped her gloved hand into his. He held on tight. The new year came with hard freezes and difficult work. A section of fence went down in a windstorm, and it took Morgan and the hands 3 days to repair it. One of the horses went lame, requiring careful nursing. The well nearly froze, needing constant attention. Penelope worked alongside the men when needed, hauling water and feeding animals, her new gloves protecting her hands from the cold. On a bitter January night, a coyote got into the chicken coop. Penelope heard the commotion and ran out in her nightgown and coat, grabbing the shotgun from beside the kitchen door. She fired into the air, and the coyote fled. But 3 chickens were dead and 2 more were injured. Morgan came running from the barn, the hands behind him. What happened? Are you hurt? I am fine. The chickens are not. Penelope knelt beside the injured birds, examining them in the lamplight. These 2 might survive if we can keep them warm and clean. They set up a box in the kitchen, lined with straw, and tended the chickens like babies. One died that night, but the other clung to life. Penelope sat up with it, dribbling water into its beak, keeping it warm. Morgan sat with her, keeping the stove fed, making coffee. You did not have to shoot, he said. You could have called for us. The coyote would have killed every bird by then. I did what needed doing. She stroked the chicken's feathers gently. My father taught me to shoot when I was 12. He said a woman needed to protect herself, especially in the territories. Smart man. He was. I wish you could have met him. Penelope looked up at Morgan. He would have liked you. He respected men who worked hard and kept their word. My father was a drunk who disappeared when I was 10, Morgan said. My mother raised me and my sister alone, taking in laundry. I started working when I was 8 years old. Cowboying was the first thing I found that I was good at, that made me feel like I mattered. You have a sister, had. She died in childbirth 5 years ago, her and the baby both. His face was shadowed with old grief. Her husband remarried within 6 months. I have not spoken to him since. I am sorry. That is too much loss for one person. We all carry our losses, Morgan said. You carry yours too. The chicken died just before dawn. Penelope buried it behind the coop, saying a few words over the small grave. Morgan stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. You have a good heart, he said. It was just a chicken. It was a life. You honored it, that matters. They walked back to the house as the sun rose cold and bright. In the kitchen, Morgan caught her hand. Penelope, I need to tell you something. Her heart leapt. What is it? I care about you. More than an employer should care about his housekeeper. More than I thought I could care about anyone again. His pale eyes searched hers. I do not know what to do about it, but I cannot keep pretending I do not feel it. I care about you too, Penelope whispered. I have tried not to. I have tried to be sensible. But when I am with you, I feel like I have come home, like all the wandering and loss led me here to you. Morgan cupped her face in his calloused hands. May I kiss you? Yes. He kissed her softly, tentatively, like she was something precious that might break. Penelope rose on her toes, wrapping her arms around his neck, kissing him back with all the longing she had been hiding. He tasted like coffee and hope, and when they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless. I do not want you to be my housekeeper anymore, Morgan said. Penelope's stomach dropped. You are dismissing me. No, Lord, no. I want to court you properly. I want to marry you if you will have me. But that means you cannot work for me. It would not be right. Morgan, I need the income. I cannot just... You would still live here, still help with the house if you wanted to, but as my wife, not my employee. Everything I have would be yours. The ranch, the land, all of it. We would be partners. Penelope stepped back, her mind racing. This is very sudden. I know. And if you need time, I will give it to you. But I have spent 6 months learning who you are, and every day I am more certain. You are the woman I want beside me. Not to replace Sarah, but to build a new life with. A different life, but a good one. What if I say yes and then you change your mind? What if you realize I am not what you thought? What if you are exactly what I thought and more? Morgan countered. Penelope, I am not asking you to decide this minute. Think about it. Pray on it if you are inclined. But know that I am serious. I want you in my life permanently. She thought about it for 3 days, barely sleeping, weighing every angle. She could keep working as his housekeeper, maintain the safety of their current arrangement. But her feelings for him were too strong for that. Every day would be torture, loving him but unable to have him fully. Or she could take the risk. Trust that what they had built in 6 months was real and strong enough to last. Trust that his love for Sarah did not diminish his capacity to love again. Trust herself to be a good wife, a good partner. On the 3rd night, she walked out to the barn where Morgan was checking on a pregnant mare. I have an answer for you. He turned, hope and fear warring in his expression. Tell me. Yes, I will marry you. I will be your wife and your partner. She moved closer. But I need you to promise me something, anything. Do not compare me to Sarah. Let me be myself, different from her. Let us build something new together, not try to recreate what you had before. I promise. You are nothing like Sarah, and I love you for exactly who you are. He pulled her into his arms. I love you, Penelope Parker. I will spend every day proving it. I love you too, Morgan Hayes. Even though you are grumpy before coffee and you track mud everywhere and you never hang up your coat. He laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. I will work on those things. Do not work too hard. I love you as you are too. They were married in February in a small ceremony at the church in Tombstone, with Jack and Tom as witnesses and Mr. Garrison standing in as surrogate father to give Penelope away. She wore a simple blue dress she had sewn herself, and Morgan wore his best suit, his hair slicked back and his boots polished. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Morgan kissed her like she was air and he had been drowning. The Hands had decorated the ranch house with ribbons and flowers, and they had a small celebration with cake and music. Penelope danced with Morgan in the parlor while Jack played fiddle, and she felt like she was floating. This man was her husband. This house was her home. After years of loneliness and loss, she had found belonging. That night in the bedroom they would now share, Morgan was gentle and patient, taking his time to learn what pleased her. Penelope had been nervous, inexperienced, but Morgan made her feel safe and cherished. When they finally came together, it felt like the most natural thing in the world, two people completing each other. Afterward, lying in his arms, Penelope said, "Are you happy?" "Happier than I have been in a long time," Morgan said, kissing her forehead. "Are you?" "Yes, I am home." Spring brought new calves and new hope. Penelope settled into her role as Morgan's wife, managing the house but also learning more about the ranch. She rode out with Morgan to check fences, helped brand the calves, learned to doctor sick animals. The Hands treated her with respect, and she made sure they were well fed and fairly treated. She still tended graves in town twice a week, now riding in with Morgan or one of the Hands. She visited her parents' graves, telling them about her new life, about the man she had married. And she tended Sarah's grave with special care, grateful to the woman who had loved Morgan first, who had helped shape him into the man he was. One warm April afternoon, Penelope was working in the garden she had planted behind the house when she felt a wave of nausea. She barely made it behind the barn before she was sick. When it happened again the next day, and the day after that, she knew she was pregnant. She waited until she was certain before telling Morgan. They were sitting on the porch at sunset, watching the sky turn purple and gold when she said, "I have news." He looked at her, concerned. "What is wrong? You have been pale lately." "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right." She took his hand, placed it on her still flat belly. "We are going to have a baby, in late autumn, I think." Morgan's eyes went wide. "A baby, are you sure?" "As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor. But yes, I am sure." He swept her up in his arms, spinning her around, laughing. "We are having a baby, Lord above, Penelope, we are having a baby." His joy was infectious, and Penelope laughed too, even as happy tears streamed down her face. When he set her down, he cupped her face. "I am going to be a father. I never thought I would get this chance. Sarah and I tried for 3 years, but it never happened." "You will be a wonderful father," Penelope said. "I have seen how you are with the animals, gentle and patient. You will be the same with our child. And you will be an amazing mother. Our child will be so loved." The pregnancy was not easy. Penelope was sick for months, could barely keep food down. Morgan worried constantly, but she assured him this was normal. By summer she was feeling better, her belly rounding, the baby moving inside her. She had to give up some of the harder ranch work, but she still managed the house and tended to lighter chores. In July, Morgan hired a young woman from town named Clara to help Penelope with the housework. Clara was 16, eager to earn money and grateful for the work. Penelope taught her to cook and clean, and Clara proved a quick learner and pleasant company. By September, Penelope was large and uncomfortable, ready to be done with pregnancy. The baby sat low, heavy, making it hard to walk or sleep. Morgan fussed over her constantly, bringing her tea and pillows, rubbing her aching back. "You do not have to coddle me," Penelope said, though she was secretly touched by his attentiveness. "You are carrying my child. I will coddle you as much as I want." The pain started on a cool October morning. Penelope woke to a cramping in her back, a tightening across her belly. She knew immediately what it meant. "Morgan, wake up. The baby is coming." He bolted upright, instantly alert. "Now, are you sure?" "I am sure. Send Tom for the midwife in town. And send Clara to help me." The labor was long and hard. Penelope had always been strong, but this was a different kind of strength required. She walked when she could, rested when she needed to, breathed through the waves of pain. Clara stayed by her side, bringing water and cool cloths. Morgan paced outside, the hands trying to distract him with work, but he could not focus. When the midwife arrived, she examined Penelope and nodded approvingly. "You are doing well. It will be a few more hours, but everything looks good." Those few hours felt like days. Penelope lost track of time, focused only on the work her body was doing. When the midwife finally said, "It is time to push," Penelope bore down with everything she had. The baby was born just as the sun set, coming into the world with a lusty cry. "A boy," the midwife announced, placing the squalling infant on Penelope's chest. "A healthy baby boy." Penelope looked down at her son, at his red face and dark hair, his tiny fists waving, and fell instantly in love. "Hello, little one. We have been waiting for you." Morgan was allowed in then, and when he saw his wife and son, he wept. "He is perfect, Penelope, he is perfect." "What should we name him?" Penelope asked. Morgan thought for a moment. "What was your father's name?" "James. James Peter Parker." "Then we will call him James Peter Hayes. JP for short, if that suits you." "It suits me perfectly." Little JP was a good baby, nursing well and sleeping in reasonable stretches. Penelope marveled at him constantly, at his tiny fingers and toes, at the way he looked at her with unfocused eyes, at the sweet weight of him in her arms. Morgan was a devoted father, walking the floor with JP when he fussed, changing nappies without complaint, singing off-key lullabies. The ranch hands were charmed by the baby, taking turns holding him and making ridiculous faces to earn his smiles. Clara helped Penelope with the housework so she could rest and recover. The whole ranch felt different, softer, filled with new life and new hope. In November, when JP was a month old, Penelope bundled him up and took him to visit the cemetery. She stopped first at her parents' graves. "Mama, Papa, I want you to meet your grandson. James Peter, named for you both. I wish you could be here to hold him, but I am telling him about you. He will know his grandparents through my stories." Then she walked to Sarah's grave. Morgan was waiting there, having ridden ahead. Together they stood before the simple cross. "Sarah, this is JP, Penelope said softly. "Thank you for loving Morgan first. Thank you for shaping him into the man I love. I will make sure he knows about you too, that his father was loved before and that love led to more love." Morgan squeezed her hand, then spoke to Sarah himself. "She is right. You made me believe in love, and that made me able to love again. I hope you are at peace wherever you are. I hope you know I am happy, that we are happy." They stood there for a while, the three of them, a family honoring the past while embracing the future. Life settled into new rhythms. JP grew quickly, hitting milestones that delighted his parents. First smile, first tooth, first time sleeping through the night. Penelope continued to tend graves, now bringing JP with her, teaching him from infancy about remembering the dead with respect and love. The ranch prospered. Morgan made good deals on his cattle, expanded the herd, bought more land. Penelope managed everything with skill, keeping the books, overseeing supplies, making sure the operation ran smoothly. They were partners in every sense, and their respect for each other deepened into something unshakable. When JP was 18 months old, Penelope discovered she was pregnant again. This time the news was calmer, though no less joyful. They knew what to expect now, felt ready. "You hope for a girl this time?" Morgan asked, his hand on her belly. "I do not mind either way. Another boy would give JP a brother to grow up with. A girl would round out our family. Either way, we are blessed. This pregnancy was easier than the first. Penelope was not as sick, felt stronger. By the time she was heavy with child, JP was walking and talking, keeping her busy but also making her laugh with his toddler antics. Their daughter was born in spring, arriving quickly in the middle of the night. Morgan barely had time to fetch the midwife before Penelope was delivering, fierce and fast. The baby girl came out screaming, red-faced and furious at the world. "She has your spirit," Morgan said, laughing and crying at the same time. They named her Rose Patricia, after the wild roses that grew by the creek and Penelope's mother, whose middle name had been Patricia. Rose had Morgan's pale blue eyes and Penelope's dark blonde hair, and from the start, she was determined and strong-willed. With two small children, the house was chaos but happy chaos. JP adored his baby sister, bringing her toys and patting her head gently. Morgan expanded the house, adding more bedrooms and a bigger kitchen. Penelope hired another girl from town to help Clara, who had stayed on and become part of the family. The years passed in a blur of diapers and laughter, skinned knees and first words, bedtime stories and family dinners. Penelope and Morgan celebrated each anniversary, marveling at how far they had come from that first meeting in the cemetery. When JP was 5 and Rose was 3, Morgan took the whole family to visit Sarah's grave. The children had been taught about Sarah, about how their father had loved before and how that was okay. They laid flowers on the grave, and JP said in his serious little voice, "Thank you for taking care of Papa before my mama did." Penelope's eyes filled with tears. Morgan pulled her close, kissing her temple. "We are the luckiest people alive," he whispered. "We are," she agreed. More children followed. Another boy they named Thomas, then twin girls they named Lucy and Jane. The house was full of noise and love, the ranch thriving. Penelope still tended graves when she could, teaching her children the importance of honoring the dead. They grew up knowing every story in the cemetery, understanding that death was part of life but not the end of love. JP showed an early talent for working with horses, gentle and patient like his father. Rose was fearless, wanting to learn everything, do everything. Thomas was quiet and thoughtful, happiest with a book. The twins were mischievous, always getting into trouble together. As the children grew, Morgan and Penelope grew too. They learned each other's rhythms, how to fight fair and make up sweet, how to support each other through hard times and celebrate the good. They never took each other for granted, always remembering how they had found each other through loss and loneliness. On their 10th anniversary, Morgan gave Penelope a headstone to replace the simple cross on Sarah's grave. It was beautiful, carved with roses and Sarah's name, dates, and a simple inscription. "Beloved wife, remembered always." "I wanted to do something permanent," Morgan explained, "to honor her properly. Is that all right?" "It is more than all right," Penelope said. "She deserves to be remembered." "We all do." They placed the headstone together, their children helping. It felt right, the whole family working together to honor the woman who had been part of Morgan's story before Penelope. That night, after the children were in bed, Morgan and Penelope sat on the porch, watching the stars come out. "Do you ever regret it?" Morgan asked. "Marrying me, taking on the ranch, all of this?" "Never, not for a single moment." Penelope leaned her head on his shoulder. "You hired me to tend graves for $1 each. Then you hired me for life to tend your heart instead. That was the best bargain I ever made." Morgan laughed softly. "I think I got the better end of that deal. You have given me everything, Penelope. A home, a family, a reason to wake up every morning. You brought me back to life." "We brought each other back to life," Penelope corrected. "That is what love does. It resurrects us from our grief, gives us new purpose. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, hearts full. In the distance, they could hear the cattle settling for the night, the wind in the cottonwoods, the creek running over stones. All the sounds of home. Years continued to pass. The children grew up strong and capable. JP took over more of the ranch operations as Morgan's back began to ache from decades of hard work. Rose married a neighboring rancher's son and stayed nearby, giving Penelope grandchildren to dote on. Thomas went east for schooling, becoming a teacher, but returned every summer. The twins married brothers and settled on adjoining homesteads, keeping the family close. Morgan and Penelope aged together gracefully, their hair going gray, their faces lining with laugh lines and sun damage, but their love never aged. Every morning, Morgan still brought Penelope coffee in bed. Every evening, she still made his favorite meals. They still held hands on the porch, still laughed at each other's jokes, still found reasons to steal kisses when no one was looking. Penelope continued tending graves well into her 60s, though she moved more slowly now. She had tended hundreds of graves over the decades, knew the history of Tombstone through its dead. Young people came to her for stories, and she shared them generously, making sure the past was not forgotten. Morgan visited Sarah's grave less frequently as he aged, his knees protesting the walk up the hill. But on their wedding anniversary each year, he and Penelope still went together, still tended the grave with care. It had become a ritual, a way of honoring all the love in their lives, past and present. One spring morning when Penelope was 68 and Morgan was 72, she woke to find him watching her with a soft smile. "What?" she asked, self-conscious. "I am memorizing you. Every line, every freckle, every gray hair. I want to remember exactly how you look right now, happy and safe in our bed, getting morbid in your old age, getting grateful. Every day with you is a gift, Penelope Hayes. I do not take a single one for granted." She kissed him tenderly. "We still have years ahead of us, you stubborn man. Do not go planning your funeral yet." "I am not planning anything except what to have for breakfast, but I wanted you to know, in case I forget to say it, you are the love of my life, and you are mine. Now get up and let me make that breakfast before the grandchildren arrive and eat everything in sight." Their life was not without challenges. Droughts came and hard winters. They lost cattle to disease, had to rebuild after a fire damaged the barn. Morgan's health began to fail slowly, his heart not as strong as it once was. But through it all, they faced things together, partners to the end. Penelope was 70 when Morgan died, peacefully in his sleep after a good day working on the ranch. She woke to find him cold beside her, his face peaceful. The grief was enormous, crushing, but she had known it was coming. They had talked about it, made plans, said their goodbyes without saying the word. JP and the other children gathered for the funeral. Penelope stood strong, telling stories about their father, making sure everyone knew how much he had been loved and how much he had loved in return. They buried him next to Sarah, per his wishes, with a headstone that matched hers. "You loved her first, and that is right," Penelope said at the graveside. "You gave her the place of honor, and you gave me everything else. I am content with that." After the funeral, her children wanted her to move in with one of them, worried about her being alone, but Penelope refused. "The ranch is my home. Your father and I built it together. I am not leaving while I still have breath." She continued living on the ranch, tending to the house and garden, visiting the graves she had cared for over a lifetime. She added Morgan's grave to her regular rounds, keeping it neat and clean, talking to him like she once had to her parents, to Sarah. "I miss you something fierce," she told him one afternoon, pulling weeds from around his headstone. "But I am not ready to join you yet." I have grandchildren to spoil and stories to tell. When it is my time, I will come find you. Until then, you rest easy knowing you were loved well." Penelope lived another 8 years, dying at 78 surrounded by children and grandchildren. She passed quietly, her body simply wearing out, and her last words were, "Tell Morgan I am coming home." They buried her on the other side of Morgan, the 3 graves in a row: Sarah, Morgan, and Penelope. 3 people whose lives had intertwined in love and loss, creating a story that would be told for generations. JP placed a headstone on his mother's grave that read, "Penelope Parker Hayes, beloved wife and mother, tender of graves and hearts, 1861–1939. The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through generations." The cemetery and tombstone continued to grow, and other grave tenders came and went. But old-timers still told stories about Penelope Parker, the woman who had tended graves for $1 each, until a cowboy hired her for life to tend his heart instead. And on quiet evenings, when the wind blew just right across the hill where the 3 graves stood, some people swore they could hear laughter, soft and warm, the sound of love that outlasted death itself, proving that some bonds could never be broken, not by time, not by distance, not even by the grave. The end.